It's the end of March, so I once again wanted to highlight undervalued players compared to more premium players despite similar age, situation, and production. Being able to trade down within tiers at positions while still maintaining production, to me, is by far the easiest way to add draft capital or more assets in general to your dynasty roster, and that's going to be the point of this series throughout the entire offseason. The way this is going to work is I'm going to show you stats from two similar players, but one is valued at a premium in startup drafts or trades, and the other is valued as like the generic version, and then we're going to break it all down. So first up, we actually have a quarterback comparison. So our premium quarterback just turned 25 years old, and over his last 17 games, he's averaged per game 30 pass attempts, 64% completion percentage, 250 passing yards, 1.7 touchdowns, 0.7 interceptions, 7.5 rushing yards per game, 16.9 fantasy points per game, and has totaled 13 top 24 weeks, 6 of which were top 12. And our generic quarterback is actually 32 years old, and over his last 17 games, he's averaged per game 33.5 pass attempts, a 70% completion percentage, 252 passing yards, 1.8 touchdowns, 0.6 interceptions, 21.5 rushing yards per game, 19 fantasy points per game, and has totaled 16 top 24 weeks, 10 of which were top 12. And to further feed the comparison, both quarterbacks supported 2 top 15 wide receivers in 2022. Both of them were drafted by AFC East teams, and both were backups to Ryan Fitzpatrick at some point in their careers. All right, those last two probably gave it away, but if you haven't guessed it yet, our premium player is Tua Tagovailoa, currently valued as QB 13 in March ADP, and our generic quarterback is actually Geno Smith, who's currently valued at QB 25 in March ADP. So why the discrepancy? Well, I think it's because it's Geno Smith, right? Like, no one believed that he would even be remotely competent as a quarterback for Seattle heading into last season, let alone do what he did in throwing for almost 4,300 yards and 30 touchdowns while continuing to support both DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett as top 15 fantasy wide receivers. Look, I get it. It's an outlier season, only a matter of time before Geno Smith comes crashing back down to earth. And when he does, he's going to be a 33, almost 34-year-old quarterback on the verge of being replaced by a rookie and just completely dead for dynasty. Or maybe this is just the new Geno Smith and he can be a reliable fantasy QB2 for the next 2 to 3 years as he completes his contract with the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves here. 16 top 24 weeks in 2022 out of 17 weeks in the season. In fact, they were all top 20 weeks, not just top 24. So he only had one game last year where he was not startable in Superflex leagues, plus 10 of those 17 games were actually QB1 weeks. So he should have been started in basically every single league over half of the season in one quarterback or Superflex leagues. That is insane. Honestly, because of that production, I really could have compared him to almost any quarterback valued higher than him, but I chose Tua for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think he's the one quarterback out there that most of you have that you're kind of wondering what the heck to do with him. And then two, Tua fits the comparison a little bit closer as a player whose primary reason for being so productive is because of the receivers that he's throwing to with minimal upside from running the ball. Now, don't get me wrong, Geno Smith can run, and he showed a little bit of that upside with over 300 rushing yards, but he didn't showcase the same exact rushing upside like other primary pocket quarterbacks like Mahomes, Burrow, Trevor Lawrence even. Plus, Tua's talent level is always more in question than guys like Justin Herbert or Dak Prescott even, who also had down seasons in 2022, but we know their upsides are just tremendously higher. So to me, Tua is the guy to trade down here to go and get Geno Smith. He has upside, sure, don't get me wrong. He's also way younger. He's like 7 years younger than Geno Smith, but he is also a risk because of all the concussions that he suffered. If he has a couple more, his career is really in jeopardy at that point. According to our trade analyzer, the difference between Tua and Geno right now is the 103 to 104 in Superflex leagues. That is an enormous gap in value for two players who could realistically score exactly the same in 2023, or Geno could just, again, straight up outproduce Tua like he did in 2022. Not to mention that the 103 to 104 is prime rookie quarterback range this year in Superflex leagues, where you can get one of Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, or the home run swing on Anthony Richardson. So you just turned a semi-risky quarterback in Tua into two quarterbacks in Superflex, and one that can produce now in Geno Smith, and the other one to build around as a rookie. The analyzer also has players like Drake London, Devonta Smith, Travis Etienne, DK Metcalf, even all as options to fill that gap instead of the rookie pick if you wanted to go that route, all of which I would take in a heartbeat in this deal. So you have some options here if you have Tua and you want to break them down into multiple pieces, or even if you don't have Tua, you just want to go buy Geno Smith outright as your QB3 right now if you're contending, I would 100% be doing that. Send your 111 or like Alvin Kamara or Rashad Bateman even if you're buying Geno from a rebuilder, and just go get a quarterback who could honestly be your QB2, but you just bought for QB3 prices. Before continuing though, I wanted to mention that if you like this content and want to support what we're doing on this channel, please consider joining our YouTube memberships where you will gain access to additional videos every single month, including a bank of 7 videos that you can watch already. Plus, we will be starting exclusive live streams when we have enough members, and I just posted a link to a Google Sheet that houses all of the data that I'm looking at for my marker system, everything that you want for running backs and wide receivers. It's all in that Google Sheet. So if you want access to all of that, check out the link in the description down below. Join the bonus content tier, and thank you guys for checking it out. Next up, we have a wide receiver comparison. So our premium wide receiver is actually turning 26 at the beginning of April, and over his last 17 games has averaged per game 7 targets, 4 receptions, 52 yards, 0.4 touchdowns, 11.7 fantasy points per game, and has totaled 6 top 24 weeks, 5 of which were actually top 12. And our generic receiver just turned 25 a week ago in March, and over his last 17 games has averaged per game 6.7 targets, 4.5 receptions, 60 receiving yards, 0.5 receiving touchdowns, 13.5 fantasy points per game, and has totaled 5 top 24 weeks, 3 of which were top 12. And to further feed the comparison, both wide receivers were late first-round picks in their NFL drafts. They're both currently in the NFC, and they both will be playing with essentially a new quarterback that they didn't play with in 2022. I'm sorry, I really just couldn't find any better comparisons between the two, so sorry. But if you haven't guessed it yet, our premium player is DJ Moore, currently valued as wide receiver 18 in March ADP, and our generic player is Brandon Aiyuk, valued at wide receiver 29 in March ADP. So why the discrepancy here? This one I think is similar-ish kind of to Tua and Geno, where we just trust the higher valued guy more. In this instance, I think we can all agree that DJ Moore is an extremely talented wide receiver who just hasn't gotten a real opportunity to truly explode for fantasy because of bad quarterback and overall team play. Aiyuk has been the wide receiver 2 on the 49ers basically since he came into the league and has never really been too trustworthy for consistent production because he's on the 49ers offense. But now DJ Moore is in Chicago as the wide receiver 1 for Justin Fields, and because that has been perceived as an upgrade from Moore's value, he has been a hot player in dynasty conversations everywhere. But notice that I said perceived upgrade because I actually don't think it is. If anything, it's at best a side grade for DJ Moore. Yes, I do think that Fields is the best quarterback he will have ever played with in the NFL, but I'm not really sure how good that actually is for DJ Moore. Chicago doesn't throw like at all. Like they make the Ravens look like a very pass happy team. That's how little Chicago threw the ball last year. I actually had a running joke at the beginning of the year that Darnell Mooney had an elite target share because he did, but a 30% target share on 15 pass attempts is only like 4 to 5 targets, which is not a good raw volume number. And that's the issue I think DJ Moore is going to have in Chicago, because as the team's wide receiver 1, he should see an elite target share just like he did in Carolina at 27% in 2022. But even if Chicago increases its total pass attempts by 100 to 475, that's only 130 targets on that 27% target share. And again, that's assuming that Moore keeps his target share and Chicago is closer to 500 attempts than it is 400. A 27% target share on 425 attempts is 117 targets, almost exactly what Moore had last year when he was the wide receiver 25 in fantasy, averaging 11.7 PPR points per game. That's fine production, but it's also extremely replaceable. In fact, Aiyuk saw very similar target numbers last year, also broke 1,000 yards, which is why he was the wide receiver 15 in fantasy, averaging 13.5 points per game. But in our ADP, Moore is valued well ahead of Aiyuk, despite Aiyuk actually being more productive in 2022 and also a year younger. Actually, according to our trade analyzer, the difference between the two right now is a mid-2023 second, which I know doesn't really sound like a lot, but if you're getting the same player production-wise, potentially even the better player production-wise, why not take the extra shot on an additional asset with that second? Or if you don't want the pick, just go get like Tyler Lockett or Cam Akers or James Conner if you're contending and you want a player and the production now. You literally just cut an extra starter to move laterally at your wide receiver 2 spot. Also in this value range is a 2025 first, which I could totally see getting done if the person giving you that first doesn't care about picks 2 years in the future. But again, you just moved laterally at wide receiver and you added a first round pick to do it. Who cares when it actually is? It's a first round pick. This is free dynasty money that you should be trying to acquire and take advantage of right now. And those types of moves are what separates the savvy dynasty player from the casuals. I'm going to be doing videos like this all off season, so be sure to hit subscribe for more content like this. And in fact, if you missed this same type of video from back in January that's still very applicable today, then you can watch that video right up here.